So I think the cybersecurity is a big opportunity to use it as an entry point, and kind of a little bit of a cliche here, but it can be from a Black Friday, it could become a Block Friday, kind of think as a way to think about, the retail opportunity to turn, the market, a little bit of 90 degrees almost, and think it through that lens.
Welcome to TBR Talks, decoding strategies and ecosystems of the globe's top tech firms, where we talk business model disruption in the broad technology ecosystem, from management consultancies to systems integrators, hyperscalers to independent software vendors, telecom operators to network and infrastructure vendors, and chip manufacturers to value-added resellers. We'll be answering some of the key intelligence questions we've heard from executives and business unit leaders among the leading professional IT services and telecom vendors. I'm Patrick Heffernan, Principal Analyst, and today we have a special Black Friday episode talking about retail and consumer products with Boz Hristov and Ben Carbonneau. So Boz and Ben, we're recording this for Black Friday, traditionally the biggest retail consumer day of the year in the United States, and probably now becoming a global thing. I don't know. I know they celebrate Thanksgiving in other countries too now. But let's talk about technology, because that's what we do here, TBR Talks. Let's talk about the technology side of the consumer and retail space and what you've seen in the last couple of years, maybe with the advent, the age of GenAI, with some of the other changes we've seen from emerging technologies, and what that's done to the retail and consumer space. And Ben, I'll let you go first. What are you seeing from your perspective?
Sure. Thanks, Patrick. So the first thing that I really think has gained momentum recently is the use of computer vision in retail AI solutions. So essentially, computer vision really just leverages cameras, scanners, and other sensors to do a variety of things. So some of these use cases include inventory management, autonomous checkout systems, some customer behavior analytics, things like virtual try-ons, and then also product recommendations. So I know you were with me. We recently went to Lenovo Tech World out in Seattle in October, and they showcased a couple of computer vision retail solutions that I found pretty interesting. And the first one, I think, was more geared toward anti-theft. And that was really looking and tracking kind of the demographic of the person going in there, as well as other traits and where they were walking around the store. So the person who was demoing that solution really had some good data points around how long a person stays in a store, what if they're going to a high value area and then immediately leaving, they're at a higher risk of being a shoplifter than somebody who's maybe going around the lower value areas and spending more time in the store. So that was one solution. The other solution was more around kind of the consumer behavior analytics, whereas more tracking the movements of people around different kiosks, aisles, and different inventory stands in a store to kind of determine where certain customers are going at certain times of day. And then again, looking at the certain traits of those customers.
Right. That second use case I remember well, because they talked about a person being in the dairy section, and then they would, as they were moving away from that, they would get some sort of, the billboard or the display would say something about, milk and cookies. So that would lead them into I know, boss, you're shaking your head, but it actually kind of makes sense. And one of the ways they explained it was saying that the ad signage in a grocery store is static. And so this is something that can change. Not only could you change it every day, you could actually change it based on the behavior of the people walking around. I want to throw you a curveball here, Ben, though. So all of these solutions talk about anonymized data. They talk about there's no facial recognition. They're not picking up anything off somebody's phone that can be identified as them. How much do you think that's real, or how much is that simply something that has to be said now in order to get buyers over the concern about collecting personal information?
I think it's definitely something that has to be said now to get those buyers over that hump around that personal information, kind of that data privacy piece. I think that's something that we'll have to wait to see. I think a lot of it also has to do with kind of who the provider of the technology is. So I know that, for example, just hearing from different providers of some of these AI solutions that use computer vision, a lot of the value prop around that solution in itself is the data privacy. I think there was another solution, and it was just more security focused, less retail. Another at Lenovo that was demoed, and this person who was demoing the solution really stressed that because he's not one of these really large companies, he has to really get customers hooked on being private and not selling their data, with the whole thought that if he was selling that data and the customers found out, he would never really gain traction
Right.
for his solution.
Yes, but let me throw the real curveball here now. I just sort of set you up. Because that first case, the buyer in the first case is seeing someone go into a high value part of the store and linger for a while and then leave quickly. And if they go to their technology provider and say, "Can you tell me who that is?" And the technology provider says, "Well, no, it's all anonymized." To some degree, that diminishes the value of it. I mean, wouldn't they want to be able to know who it is? Wouldn't they want those identifiers? Wouldn't the police want those identifiers?
Sure. So yeah, no, definitely agree with you there. And I think specifically to that one solution that was kind of looking at the people going in, kind of more the anti-theft and how much time they were spending in the store if they were going to the high value areas. That solution, I know that that was developed, I believe, for the North American market. And that actually did have some cameras that were, I don't know if they were doing facial recognition, but there was kind of a video feed going on. Whereas this other solution that we talked about also being demoed at the Lenovo event that was more around the behavior analytics and the digital advertising. That solution was more anonymized, where it was just the people were represented as dots moving around on the screen. And I believe that was because that solution was more geared to a European audience.
That could be. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Boz, I know you've gone through at some of the different analyst events we've been through over the years, the sort of the store of the future, walking around, seeing all the different displays. What are some of the trends or some of the things within the retail and consumer space when you think about it from a IT services or a consulting perspective that jump out at you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm listening to Ben here and just trying to think where are the opportunities for the space I cover. A couple of areas. One is, I think you just alluded a moment ago, around digital advertising, digital marketing. Certainly an area that we've seen a lot of the discussion around personal identifier information, how it's being used about more targeted campaigns. We've seen most of IT services, vendors, and consultancies to add agency-like capabilities over the years. Some more successful than others. But I think the idea behind trying to be more proactive, yet maintaining the privacy of the people you're using, it's a challenge. I gotta say that. So there's a good opportunity for discussions and innovation and sell the idea of what, using the solutions that Ben is mentioning to be used in the different stores, the retail of the future and whatnot. And some people may just go for it because it's, we sell a lot of it, for convenience. We give our personal information for convenience, from insurance to, everything that, we sign in with our date of birth and other information that we give away very easy just to get the coupon and whatnot. So what is to say that, the next thing is to be a little bit more get into your, and new facial recognition. That's the other drawback, to push back on your point about we take pictures and selfies left, right, and center. So while we trust Apple or Samsung or Google phones that we use every day to protect those with their cloud and whatnot, we know well that, that's, could be exposed any day, any moment, to be hacked and to be, and to be, the information can be stolen and be sold in various ways. So long way of saying digital marketing is definitely an opportunity. We've seen it. I think the technologies are getting better. But at this point of time, I think it's more challenging because the industry as a whole is facing downward pressure. The retail sector and the consumer sector, certainly there's not much, if any, discretionary spent. And innovation and digital marketing we're talking about here and the ideas of the retail of the future and whatnot, while potentially providing opportunities for optimizing and running the stores more efficiently, more effectively, fewer people, more technology. There's very little money available. I mean, perfect example, we saw what happened yesterday with Target, missing, its revenue guidance and earning guidance and stock getting a big hit. And one of the big point was like that sales are down, and they dragged down a lot of other competitors in the retail sector. So if retailers don't have the money to spend on those technologies, even though, not the same scale that maybe those technologies require, that also impacts potentially that immediate innovation opportunity. Where I think more of a tangible opportunity for services company is cybersecurity, which I think it's trying to pivot the conversation around and use that potentially, hey, we're going to think about the consumer protection first, not the technology convenience. Kind of like trying to use that as where's the consumer going? Trying to make something that actually it's not just have a technology, but what's the problem you're trying to solve here? Are you trying to sell more milk, or you're trying to sell more milk to more people, kind of like, and who are those people, and specifically to people that actually want to buy milk.
Right.
So I think the cybersecurity is a big opportunity to use it as an entry point, and a kind of a little bit of a cliche here, but it can be from a Black Friday, it could become a Block Friday, kind of think as a way to think about, the retail opportunity to turn, the market, a little bit of 90 degrees almost, and think it through that lens. Like I said, don't just try to sell milk to as many people, but to the people who actually want to buy milk. And knowing that and protect those identities and the personal information is the opening there.
So you mentioned that sort of choice between security and convenience, and that's sort of one of the best examples of where you have to make that choice is around, as you mentioned, cybersecurity.
Yeah.
And it should always be security and privacy. It should never be convenience, but we know that's not the way it actually happens. And I'm curious, I know the voice of the customer report is coming out. Is there anything in there that sort of reflects on what you said?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up, actually. Cybersecurity has actually, for the first time, ranked number one technology that is buyers are procuring to support the digital transformation of programs. It historically, for the last 5-7 years, has always been cloud. Last year was analytics with the advent of GenAI. This year is cybersecurity. I mean, GenAI is following right there and splitting cloud and cybersecurity in the middle with GenAI. And you can argue that a lot of the advent of what's happening with GenAI, the need for data protection and data privacy, is driving that greater need for cybersecurity. But I think that's also create a change in the mindset that opportunities around retail and CPG could use that, again, in conjunction with AI and automation and any kind of new technologies that might be in play. That buyer's mindset right now is focused on cybersecurity. The majority of buyers we surveyed across the globe see cybersecurity as the number one technology supporting the digital transformation program. So it's there. It's time for cyber. I know it's table stakes in a way to think about it. It's the number one technology, but the incidents that we hear about hacks and stuff, there's always something around the corner that we're not aware and it's going to come up. So they have to constantly feed into that perpetual investment that needs to be staying even more, thinking about the data protection that you need with the new solutions, thinking about the retail options, solutions, the retail of the future that Ben talked about. So the mindset is there, the budgets are there for cyber. So I think that can be a good opening for having different conversation in retail and CPG.
Right, and security as a whole can wrap into edge and IoT.
Absolutely,
and
100%,
the solutions Ben was talking about. But Ben, Boz basically said the retailers, consumer products don't have the margins, the investment, the revenue, not revenue, they have the revenue, but they don't have the margins, they don't have the money to invest in technology maybe the same way they used to. Are you seeing that as well in the space that you cover?
Yeah, I guess I'd say that. Retail, we know is like really crunched on margin. I think a good example of where they might get that kind of return on investment is with another, beating this Lenovo horse to death here, but another Lenovo use case where they installed some computer vision on the self-checkouts in some Kroger stores. And essentially what a lot of people were doing to steal merchandise from Kroger's was at a self-checkout, you could potentially put something cheaper underneath the barcode of something more expensive and then scan both items at the same time and only pay for the cheaper item that was underneath the more expensive item. I forget the exact figures, but Kroger saved a ton of money just in that kind of anti-theft piece. I forget exactly what the figure was, but it was more than enough to pay for that edge server and then the integrations with their cameras that were already there.
And that's a theme we've seen not just in the consumer products in the retail space of the savings from adapting an emerging technology enabled solution, being able to pay for that adaptation and then for the next round of some kind of transformation. Any other big trends you're seeing in the space that you're covering with respect to retail or consumer products jump out at you?
I think that retail AI computer vision is the biggest case that I see.
Yeah. Boz, anything else before we get to the last question?
Yeah, I think supply chain. Talking about savings and where you can find savings to fund any new kind of innovation, new solutions, there's a greater opportunity for optimizing the supply chain. It's not a new trend, but I think it's becoming more and more obvious that you need to really get your supply chain in order, because this is where you can really save, and having optimized the right supply chain, the suppliers, and technologies like AI and our good old friend blockchain can always help for that. No, it's another technology to put in the mix, but it can solve the problem with security, especially with GenAI and the verification of data, and be a little bit more, proactive around like who does what and where and how, and supplier management and I think optimizing supply chain, and also a lot of the big retailers have invested for better supply chain over the years and embedded different solutions that are helping them be more strategic with it. But I think there's still a opportunity for others to get a little bit behind that and spend where, to find money for the innovation that Ben is talking about. I think there's other areas in the back office that can be optimized. Supply chain is one of them.
Right. And I want to sort of put a pin in supply chain. I think we need to come back and talk about that in the new year, because I think it'll be one of the trends. We'll see an uptick in demand around consulting, around IT services, specifically on supply chain.
And we know that with the new administration here in the US,
correct,
we're going to get even more discussions around different supply chains, potential changes in the supply chain, different suppliers, countries.
Yep. We might get to talk about transfer pricing. That might actually happen.
Very
as
likely.
Exciting as that is.
Yeah.
All right. So the last question, on Black Friday morning, when you wake up and you think about what you ate on Thursday, what's going to be the food, the any aspect of the meal or the celebration or whatever that you're going to think that was the best thing I ate or drank yesterday? Buzz, I'm going to let you go first, because I know you're going to have a different answer than Ben and myself.
Well, it won't be turkey. I already had my turkey, but given that I won't be celebrating Thanksgiving the traditional way, very likely looking forward for a good Portuguese fish and good Portuguese wine. So that's kind of on the list, since we're going to be there and celebrating Thanksgiving in Portugal.
Nice.
So anything that's local from, the sea there, octopus, fish, sardines, you name it. Yeah.
Eat local, drink local.
Exactly.
All right, Ben?
All right, mine perennial favorite has got to be stuffing.
Yeah.
It's got to be made with a lot of butter. And then on the beverages end, it's got to be the toasting glass of champagne.
Nice. Well, I just found this morning my recipe for pickled cocktail onions, which are fantastic in a martini. I think it technically is called a Gibson if you do them like that. So my father-in-law used to love cocktail onions, and I realized, it's that traditional time of year. You celebrate family, so going to celebrate him by having by pickling some cocktail onions and having them on Thanksgiving.
Awesome.
Excellent, gentlemen. Thank you so much for doing this special episode. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next week, I'll be speaking with Chris Antlitz about 5G and 6G. Don't forget to send us your key intelligence questions on business strategy, ecosystems, and management consulting through the form in the show notes below. Visit tbri.com to learn how we help tech companies large and small answer these questions with the research, data, and analysis my guests bring to this conversation every week. Once again, I'm your host, Patrick Heffernan, Principal Analyst at TBR. Thanks for joining us, and see you next week.